A new week begins and a new round of severe weather after an almost record breaking April with nearly 300 tornadoes being reported across the United States. We've got potentially a big severe weather day coming up for the Central Plains on Monday. And of course, it was a day of gloom and doom in much of the Northeast and Northern Mid Atlantic states. We'll see if there's any hope for improvement in the next couple of days. And tonight we are interrupting the Perry Mason episode, The Case of the Fickle Fortune, to bring you the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is brought to you by Tempest, by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. You can run this weather station from your mobile device, and it's absolutely simple to install. Take you about 5 minutes to do it. If you purchase this or anything else from the Tempest website, because they have lots of weather gadgets and gizmos, and of course, most importantly, smart weather fashion, use the coupon code SPRING 2024 because if you do, you will get
10% off, Joe.
yes. I hope your days off were a good one.
Well, all right. The best part was I had a chance to interact yesterday with my grandson for a little while. That was probably the highlight of the whole weekend. There were other things, but I won't get into that were not so great. But nonetheless, and today, of course, was like an really ugly, indifferent, gloomy day out there with we so far we've picked up about a half an inch of rain. Temperatures have been holding close to 50 all day long, so not exactly the nicest of days to be out of doors.
Yeah, looking at everything on the satellite and the radar today, I did notice how miserable it was. And here we had, well, we had rain Friday. Oh my God, did we have rain Friday night? I think we must have had about three-quarters of an inch of rain in like 3 minutes because it
Wow.
was because it was hitting the. This was at like 3 in the morning. It was hitting the roof like I was somewhere in World War II in Europe with a machine gun standing in front of it. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And then we had some downpours yesterday morning, but we broke out into some sunshine in the afternoon. So I took the opportunity to do what I've been doing, which is landscape work. So I spent the rest of the day doing landscaping, and then today. Uh, it was pretty much, it was actually a pretty decent day, very warm, a little touch on the humid side, but nothing terrible. So my legs are killing me. I have discovered, Joe, that it's very hard to bend down to, it's very easy to get down on the ground. It is very hard to stand back up.
Really?
Oh God, yeah. And when I stand up, I hear all these cracks and loud noises that my body is emitting.
It's like pouring milk on a bowl of Rice Krispies. In other words,
Yeah, and then multiply that by the sound by about 1,000.
yeah.
It's not pleasant. But you know what? Got it done. Got more of it done. I'm not finished yet. I have about, I'd say, I'd say I'm about two thirds of done. There's a part of the front yard I can't do because it has this natural growth of spring wildflowers, and they're protected. So I have to wait for them. I mean, they're actually quite beautiful, um, but I got to wait for them. They usually start dying by the middle of May. They're just a phenomena of the early spring. So by the middle of May, the leaves turn brown and then they go away, and they're covering some of my flower bed. So I have to wait for the that vegetation to die off in order to finish off you know, my artistic work, as we would like to call it. So, anyhow, we have another busy, severe weather week coming up for the Central Plains. Um, we also seem to have a notable shift that's going to be going on this week with I think, the axis of severe weather moving into the Mississippi Valley and then into the Ohio Valley over the next after tomorrow, so Tuesday and Wednesday, and I very kind of a difficult week ahead for the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states because there's more than a few weather systems that are going to be moving along in different places, and I guess depending on where you are is going to determine if you have a decent day or if you have a cloudy day or do you get into rain. At least for the first half of the week, and then maybe something a little more dicey toward the latter part of the week. So it's just kind of um, a complicated forecast coming up for the next 7 days or so, I think.
Well, all of the days this week, it looks like the only really good day that we're going to have is Tuesday, because we're going to have kind of a cloudyish day tomorrow. It's going to be a warmer day, certainly a lot milder out there tomorrow as opposed to what we had to deal with here in the tri-state area today. Temperatures in many spots may flirt with or actually go above 70. Then Tuesday's a nice day with lots of sunshine. And incidentally, there may still be a few showers around tomorrow, especially later in the day. And then when we get to Wednesday and Thursday, Joe, as you've just alluded to, more showers and also the potential for thunderstorms. Thank God, however, they will not be of the same severity as to what they're expecting, for example, tomorrow. Tomorrow, in places like Oklahoma City, they are, I'm sure they're all ready for the day tomorrow, but it looks like tomorrow they could really get hammered, not just with heavy rain, but also potential severe weather. In fact, Ms. Spellerite mentioned that she thinks that her weather radio is going to get quite a workout tomorrow with all of the watches and warnings and advisories that'll be posted with the storms that are expected over the central part of the nation.
Yeah, I was reading SBC's discussion yesterday when they had the enhanced risk and they the way they phrased a few things in a couple of paragraphs. I thought, you know what, moderate risk is coming, and sure enough, today they actually put up they have a moderate risk up uh, in um, in areas in Oklahoma and on up into Kansas, which we will get to momentarily, which means that there's an elevated risk tomorrow of uh, up to 10 to 15% uh, for EF2s to EF5 tornadoes. And you should explain very briefly, because I posted something about this on on a news app that I write for, and some moron uh, made fun of the fact because I outlined that there's an area of 10 to 15% chance for an EF2 to an EF5 tornado, and they thought that that was like a joke. Okay, the fact that a number like 10 or 15%. Well, uh, so I went to explain to this moron that what that means is that there's a 10 if you're in the 10% zone, or 15 if you're in the 15% zone, a 15% chance of an EF2 to EF5 tornado within 25 miles of any point inside that hatched area. So if there are 100 points, if you were to go there and look at the map and start boxing out 25-mile points inside that area, just for argument's sake, and let's say there were 100 points. There's far more than that, but let's say there's 100 points. There's a 15% chance that there could be an EF2 or to an EF5 tornado at each one of those points. Okay, but cumulatively, out of 100 points, the forecast suggests that 15% of those points are going to experience an EF2 to EF5 tornado. So you know so there's going to be some really rough weather. Then I told her laugh out loud emoji was completely inappropriate when people's lives are at stake. And of course, you never hear from these people again. They just love to troll. But anyway, I just get really annoyed about that. Certain things, how certain things hit you the wrong way, and as much as you try to ignore it, you can't. That's kind of how I feel about stuff like that.
Yeah, well, some people just don't seem to understand the probability situation. that seeing a 10 or 15% for tornadic activity is so anomalously high. I guess they're thinking that, oh, well, if it's going to be that bad, they should have had like a 75%. No, you don't get that. You simply don't get that in those type of uh, discussions or conditions. 10 to 15% is certainly an eye opener, and one that you have to be very careful of if you're living in that or forecasting for that particular region.
Well, let's hold on. I just got to write a little message here to Vincent Croce, who wanted to know if I watched the Berkshire Hathaway meeting on Saturday on CNBC. I did not watch it, but I have been reading about it um, and uh, watching video clips from it. So that's some of the fun stuff that I do. I on the weekends. So anyhow, let's look at what's going on tonight because there are some areas where they are getting some rough weather. You've probably have seen that the south parts of southeast Texas are getting flooding at the level that they got back with Hurricane Harvey a number of years ago, not too many years
Right,
ago, in
right.
southeast Texas. And it kind of went under the radar. I don't think anybody, from the standpoint of coverage with this, because it's only now that they've got all these flood watches up. I just wonder what took them so long to go down this road. And I finally started hearing something about this yesterday. Uh, you know, stuff in the news world tends to fall in the cracks, especially on weekends. But a very serious situation going on in southeast Texas and a little bit further south in what is considered South Texas, which is down around San Antonio and Corpus Christi. There is a severe thunderstorm watch that is up right now. It's actually the watch box, which was much bigger than uh, what it looks like now. The northern part of the watch box has already played itself out, so now it's the southern counties here. We've also got flood watches up in northeastern Oklahoma and northwestern Arkansas, and because of a large storm system in up in Montana, pretty wrapped up low up there. You've got all sorts of high wind warnings and wind advisories and high wind watches up from New Mexico and Arizona all the way up to Montana and the Dakotas. So this is going to be tomorrow's trigger net mechanism for severe weather.
But as bad as tomorrow could be, Joe, and let's see if you, excuse me, if you agree with me on this, is the fact that we may be looking at an even larger and even worse type of severe weather day from places like southern Illinois and Indiana down through portions of Missouri and Arkansas and into Louisiana and Texas for uh,
Tuesday.
for no, not Tuesday, for Wednesday.
For Wednesday. Well, the Tuesday and Wednesday, the whole axis shifts eastward. Yeah, I mean, right now they only have slight risks indicated on their day 3 and day 4 forecasts. Um, but I certainly could see them going to an enhanced risk before this is all said and done, given what the dynamics look like.
Enhanced, or maybe even a not out of the question a moderate risk,
Well,
perhaps.
we have the moderate for tomorrow.
Right.
It's a
I'm talking
little
about that.
for Tuesday and Wednesday. Excuse me. Well, we'll look at the upper air and see what we come up with. In the meantime, not a whole lot of activity going on at the moment from the standpoint of thunderstorms. You can see there's a ton of clouds in the northeast from Maine all the way down into Virginia. And there's actually a couple of thunderstorms going on right now. I'm looking at some lightning strikes in southwest, in western Pennsylvania, down into parts of West Virginia. And that's a small area of marginal risk that SPC has highlighted for today. And then there's a line of storms. Um, Looks like almost ahead of some kind of warm front, the way the line is set up, because it's from northwest to southeast, from southeast Missouri into northeast Alabama, and that's lifting up northeastward. And then you can see the lightning strikes that are going on in South Texas and also in parts of southeast Texas, where it's more in southeast Texas, it's more about rain than anything else. And the stronger cells are down further south. And big swirl out in the western part of the United States around that storm system. that we mentioned. And as we check out the radar, now you still got rain from Maine down to about New York City, and Joe, from east of New York City over Long Island, southern and southeastern New England, still rain. Looks mostly light though. There's one patch of rain to your northwest. Otherwise, the radar is calming down a bit to the west, and then you can see the thunderstorms in southwest PA and a couple of cells there in West Virginia. Also, a couple of scattered cells in North and South Carolina and in Georgia, and then they get more numerous as we move into Missouri, into Tennessee, and northern Alabama. And here's the stuff that's going on to the south. The rain has now pushed more toward the coast. Looks like it's raining over Houston right now, east to the Louisiana state line, but go north and west of there, not a whole lot. A couple of storms up uh, on the way south of Dallas, southeast of Dallas, and you got some severe thunderstorm warnings in South Texas, and rain, mountain snows, and valley rains in the Rockies and in the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, I would think you're going to get some kind of break tomorrow in the Northeast, even though there still could be, there's another system. That system that's in Missouri and Arkansas and uh, Tennessee, that shortwave, that's going to come eastward tomorrow and probably pass off the coast near, I don't know, Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, the Delmarva Peninsula. So hard, the northern edge of that probably might get briefly up to New York City and to you before it slides out. But again, it's like you got this system that from today, which is nothing really to write home about overall, though made for a miserable day. And then this next one, which is kind of weak, and then you've got the other ones that are going to follow late this week. So a busy week. None of them look to be like be major storms for the Northeast or into the northern Mid Atlantic states, but it does make for, as I said, a very unsettled forecast going forward.
Yes, no question. You know, the frightening thing, the scary thing is when you read the discussion from SPC for tomorrow, and this is highlighting the area again in parts of Kansas and Oklahoma tomorrow. Multiple strong slash potentially long track tornadoes, very large to giant hail. I'm not making this up, folks. You can go to the Storm Prediction Center site and read this for yourself. I've rarely seen very. It's one thing to say large hail. It's another thing to say very large hail. To say giant hail. I mean, what possibly could they be alluding to for giant hail? Softball-sized hail? Is that what giant hail would be?
I would
Anyway,
think. I
very
mean,
large.
I don't think we can go up to basketball.
No, no, please, please don't. Very large to giant hail and severe to damaging winds all appear likely. And if I were living anywhere near that zone, I would make sure that I have a way to receive latest severe weather updates. And if I have one of those weather radios with the alarm, I suspect the alarm is going to be going off multiple times tomorrow in this area, especially from midday tomorrow into tomorrow afternoon and early evening. Wow.
Well, here are the risk areas tonight, where we have this slight risk down in South Texas, marginal risk that extends up into western Tennessee and southeast Missouri and a small portion of southwest Kentucky. A separate area of marginal risk in the eastern half of Ohio and western Pennsylvania. And you can see where the general thunderstorm area in the light green from New Jersey and Long Island, though I don't think you're going to see any thunderstorms tonight. South down to Florida, and then of course up in the northwestern part of up the Rockies and the Western Plains, where you see also some general thunderstorm activity being indicated there. Now, here's what they got for tomorrow. We have a moderate risk.
Right.
The moderate risk is in central Oklahoma up into south central Kansas. The enhanced risk, which obviously is much larger, covers virtually all of central and eastern Oklahoma except the southeast, all of central and eastern Kansas, western Missouri, southeastern Nebraska and even south central Nebraska. And that, by the way, comes with, so this is what they got here. Wonder if they'll go to a high risk tomorrow. If they're
I
talking,
would not that if they're calling for giant hail and they don't have a high risk tomorrow. I mean, what do you need for a high risk?
yeah, they might
I
add a
laugh.
high.
I don't mean to laugh. This is not a funny. This is not a situation to laugh at. But I mean, like, my God, I mean, this is it. I mean, this is one of those situations where you really, if I thank the Lord that I don't live in that area of the country tomorrow because I'd be a nervous wreck tonight thinking about this.
Well, they got a 15%. Well, the 10 to 15% area covers pretty much the enhanced risk and the moderate risk zone. The 15% area is the moderate risk zone of tornadoes, and that's also EF2 to EF5 potential inside that hatched area that you see here. 5%, which is not really that shabby, it goes all the way up into southwestern Iowa and further north up into northeastern Nebraska, and of course the 2% area that surrounds that. So yeah, I think if they're talking, when they're talking about giant hail in the discussion, um, large to very large hail, 2 to 2.5 inches in diameter, possible with the initial more cellular development. And then they go on to talk more about this. But yeah, folks can read SPC's um, discussion here. Uh, it's quite interesting. And going into the next day, which is day 3, so this covers Tuesday into Wednesday, we have a slight risk indicated. And this is off their long range, which they've had for the past several days. They've had this in the long range. Now, day 3 is now in the short range or the shorter range. Much of Arkansas, Tennessee, Northwest Mississippi, into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Western West Virginia. And could this wind up having an enhanced risk added to this? Sure. This forecast was put out. The day 3 forecast from SPC is put out at 2 a.m. in the morning. That was put out at 2 a.m. this morning. They don't update the day 3 forecast until tomorrow morning. And then they'll update it a couple of times as the day goes by. But that first appearance of day 3 rarely changes unless it's, something really major that happens that requires them to change it. And on the long range, Joe, and this is valid for the day 4. That's Wednesday into Thursday. This covers Northeast Texas, Northwest Louisiana, Missouri and Arkansas, Eastern Oklahoma, Northwest Mississippi, Northwest Alabama, almost just about all of Tennessee and Kentucky, Southwest Ohio, much of Indiana, much of Illinois. So we'll see how this plays out when they get into the shorter range. And who knows, this might also go to an enhanced risk when we get there.
And Chuck Cardillo on the chat board said, "We only had baseball-sized hail once around here, and that was in May of 2000. Did almost $4,000 worth of damage to our car. Baseball-sized hail."
Wow. Imagine being outside just getting hit by one of those.
You get killed. I mean,
right? Wouldn't you? I mean, it's surprising that you don't. I mean, I don't ever really remember hearing about casualties from hail. Do you?
No, and in fact, we see so much of funnel clouds and tornadoes on the evening news. I rarely ever see large hail or giant hail. In this case, I'd love I wouldn't love to see it because if whoever's stupid enough to be outside trying to photograph something like that probably is really putting their lives at stake. But just once, I'd like to see a video of hail that size. I've seen lots of pea and marble sized hail, but baseball size, holy mackerel. And thank you, Paul Roman, for hitting super chat tonight. Joe, what is the setup to cause such intense, strong storms? One setup Joe, Paul, is you've got thunderheads that are probably reaching upwards to 50 and 60,000 feet into the atmosphere, way up. We're not talking about low topped storms or low top convection. We're talking about storms that are reaching way up into the atmosphere where it is very cold all the time. And having a scenario where you've got, hail just growing in size due to the updrafts and downdrafts, till finally it just by sheer gravity just has to come down because the sheer weight of the hailstone itself. My God, it's this
Well,
Miss Spallerite, who's one of our faithful viewers almost every night, and has been dealing with her own problems, which we all know about reading off of the chat board. I think, but I mean, somebody who lives in that area where she is. I mean, this you don't need this. You don't need to worry about this. This is something that can really, if you get stressed out really fast. I don't know about anybody else, but I would, I have high blood pressure. This would blow the top of my head off just worrying about a scenario like this tomorrow with moderate risk and giant hail and tornado. This is crazy. This is crazy. The only good part about this is, if there is a good thing, is that this will probably knock uh, the stupidity of politics off the top of the national news tomorrow if this all comes to fruition. At least I would think it would, because there are lives that are at stake here with this scenario coming up tomorrow.
well, in terms of the dynamics, Paul, when you look at what's happening, so I've got the NAM up just because we can go hour by hour with the NAM. But I got the surface, and I'm going to switch to the upper air. The You see that low? There's a 990 low there up in northern Wisconsin, and I'm sorry, Wyoming, that sort of jumps around into Montana, and then it reforms down near the Nebraska-Wyoming line tomorrow morning, and then that deepens down to a 985-ish low. Okay, and you'll notice that the NAM also, you got this arm of thunderstorms that develops there in central Kansas, right there, that squall line that runs through from eastern Nebraska down central Kansas and Oklahoma. It's probably underdone because a lot of times the models don't always pick up the extent of the thunderstorm activity. So you don't see much in Oklahoma, even though they have that area in the enhanced risk. Like, I'm pretty sure that you're going to wind up seeing stuff there. But when you look at what's happening in the upper air, and we've been pointing this out on the tornado outbreaks in the last couple of weeks, when we had that those two cutoff lows that came into the west back to back. Okay, and the thing to look for is, you look at the structure of the upper air, and you look to see if the upper air trough is strengthening. Because the worst of it is when you have a strengthening shortwave upper trough, and particularly in a case where you go from here we have this animal that came into California, this very strong wrapped up upper low in Northern California early this morning, moves into Nevada, kind of weakens a bit, and gets over into Utah, and then it starts to lift up northeastward, and the shortwave trough lifts up in a negatively tilted fashion. In other words, the tilt of the trough is northwest to southeast like this. So you've got a strengthening now. That upper low starts to strengthen again. This is tomorrow afternoon. The map I have up is for 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Monday afternoon. So you've got a strengthening upper low, very very cold pool of air aloft, and you got this short wave that's also strengthening and doing the negatively tilting thing, the negative tilting thing. And when they tilt like that, that oftentimes leads to surface lows strengthening because you get the dynamics are in play. You get very rapid pressure falls and so on. This is a pretty wrapped up upper low, Joe, that reaches its peak in northern Montana sometime Tuesday afternoon and evening, and that's a kicker of a that's a pretty potent shortwave that's coming around. That's going to be the triggering mechanism for these thunderstorms. And by the way, notice these lines from Oregon to the lines in that blue area, Oregon Nevada, Utah, Colorado, how tightly packed. That's a really tight jet stream that is, very strong winds in the upper atmosphere here. And if we shift over to the, excuse me, I got a wad of dust in my throat that I can't get out of the way. If we shift to the view where we could see the vorticity and the jet streaks, you take a look at this. I mean, you got this mammoth jet that's swinging around. And look at all the jet streaks that start popping up across Kansas and Nebraska and down into Oklahoma during tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. I mean, this is about as potent as you can get. You probably could get even a little more potent than this, but this is, this is a very, very potent upper air setup that we have going on for the Plain States on tomorrow into tomorrow night.
And I went on La Plumes, and instead of looking at any place here in the Northeast, I decided to take a look at Oklahoma City. I wanted to see what the ML Cape standing for Mixed Layer Convective Available Potential Energy, what the value is. And you when it gets up to about 2,000 or higher, that's when it starts getting scary when you're thinking about severe weather or potential severe weather. And the mean, Joe, for Oklahoma City by the end of the day tomorrow, the mean ML Cape for Oklahoma City, 2,655. And there's one particular model, the MBCN, that indicates that it could be, at least according to that model, as high as 4,173. Now, you see numbers like that for an ML Cape, you know that the atmosphere is juiced. The atmosphere is ready for some explosive activity, violent activity, which is probably why Storm Prediction Center has placed that region under a moderate risk of severe weather for tomorrow. No question about that.
And by the way, if we watch the rotation of this upper air, excuse me, on the NAM after tomorrow morning, after early Tuesday morning, as the trough lifts up into the Dakotas. That upper low just kind of rotates back westward, and then another arm comes down into Nebraska and Kansas. Now, this is going to be the mechanism for severe weather. You're going to have on Tuesday, you're going to have some jet streaks in there. It doesn't look overly impressive for Tuesday, but for Wednesday, you've got the whole upper low from Montana dropping southeastward into Iowa and then strengthening again. I mean, look at these jet streaks here for Wednesday night into Thursday morning across Iowa, Missouri, and also you can see those brown spots that those are jet streaks that are up well over 50 knots in Ohio and Indiana, back down to Western Kentucky and Western Tennessee. So that Wednesday severe weather threat could be one where you could probably see at least enhanced risk pop up again. And we'll see what SPC does with that tomorrow.
Right. I'm sure that the forecasters at SPC are probably saying, let's take it one day at a time, guys and gals. Let's concentrate. Let's focus on one event, one specific event or potential event. That'll be for tomorrow, and we'll mention the potentials that may occur on Wednesday. I mean, my God, I mean, like on the extended the day 4, you've got a tremendous, not just a small area, but a tremendous area of possible severe to deal with in the nation's midsection moving eastward. So again, tomorrow's going to be a busy day. Wednesday into the Wednesday night, Thursday will be busy. It's just crazy. And meanwhile, we here in the Northeast, we've been getting our share of not so great weather. Today was not a great day, but it's certainly something that's manageable as compared to what they're going to be dealing with and what they have been dealing with in the nation. And if you just mentioned earlier in the show, Joe, what they're dealing with down in the area around Houston, all the heavy amounts of rain, the flooding, it's about as bad, almost as bad, or approaching the same kind of situation like what they had with Harvey a few years ago. I mean, literally, you need boats to travel on some streets and highways. That's
Yep.
how much rain they've been getting down there.
Now, this is for tomorrow afternoon as we look at the east. I mentioned about the area of rain that right now is in Tennessee and in Kentucky and into Missouri. So that short wave is, this one here. And that is going to just sort of mosey along to the east and pass offshore, as we said, probably, southern New Jersey down into Virginia, North Carolina. So there'll probably be an area of rain or showers with that. We'll see how close it gets. And then Tuesday, a little bit of a ridge position there. So, Tuesday looks okay. And then over the rest of this week, the upper trough starts to shift more into the eastern part of the United States. So, this is a setup as we get into the late part of the week. You've got more troughing in the east, and there's some kind of, shortwave here from Michigan back to Iowa that swings around to the southeast and goes almost negatively tilted here off the Virginia coast. So there might be some kind of coastal low here that is being indicated for Friday, maybe on Friday. So we'll take a look and see what the surface does. But then there's another follow-up upper low that drops down from central Canada over the Great Lakes behind it, uh, and swings a trough into the eastern part of the United States sometime on Sunday. So I don't know if that, I don't think it's a severe weather issue, at least initially, but we'll see what happens when we get down the road. But I'm just taking a look at this latest model run here of the GFS. So you can see this area of rain tonight goes out. Tomorrow, we're kind of in no man's land because there's no real push of dry air behind it. Maybe if somebody breaks out into some sun for a short period of time. And there's that, area of rain that passes off Virginia, New Jersey to Long Island, Monday night into Tuesday morning. Then that goes out. And of course, you see the wrapped up low up in Montana. And then we go on into Wednesday, and some energy breaks out of the Great Lakes and moves across New England with some showers during the day, Wednesday down to northern New Jersey and Long Island. But that's a weak system that goes by. And then here comes this developing low in Illinois. So this is where you could see severe weather risks in Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and all the rest of it, though, as we mentioned earlier, for later Wednesday and Wednesday night. That low goes east northeast to western Pennsylvania. It looks like there's some kind of warm front on Thursday that's pinned down in southern New Jersey. And that would suggest to me that it could be sort of gloom and doom and 50s if you're north of that warm front in northern New Jersey to southern New England and points north, while if you're in Maryland and Delaware and Virginia and points south, you've got 70s and 80s and maybe the chance for thunderstorms there. And that low tries to get out of the way. Now here's where you get that energy that swings around, and suddenly there's like a coastal low from South Carolina. This is pretty unusual. Coastal low that forms off the North Carolina coast and then goes northward. What's that, a nine? I mean, this is out 144 hours. We'll see how it changes, Joe. There's a I think that's a 987 low that it has southeast of Montauk and south of Nantucket by the time we get to Saturday afternoon. There are some people who think it should be illegal for it to rain on the weekend. Well, this run of the GFS says rain and some wind later Friday night into Saturday afternoon. If this is the case, next weekend, and then that goes out. Then there's another upper trough that swings through on Sunday with some showers.
And of course, next Sunday, Mother's Day. Not a very, I mean, it was still a week out, but I mean, it's not a very optimistic scenario for mom. But of course, who cares unless you're planning to go somewhere and eat out of doors on Mother's Day. Most people on Mother's Day will probably be in a restaurant inside, so it does in some ways it doesn't really matter. But you'd like to have a nice bright day, a nice sunny day, and unfortunately, from what Joe has been just mentioning here, we move toward the end of the weekend into next weekend. It may not be quite that for the weekend next weekend.
I don't know about you, but um, we never went ever to a restaurant on Mother's Day, ever. I don't know, my family, to the mothers in my family, it was considered an absolute insult to go to a restaurant on Mother's Day.
I remember one incident. I call it an incident because we had Renata's mom and my mom, and they were coming in from two different directions or whatever. We were to meet at a restaurant on City Island, and
Oh yeah,
we learned our lesson very, very quickly. Never, if you're going to go somewhere on Mother's Day weekend, do it on Saturday. Don't do it on the day, Sunday. But we did, and we arrived. The other half of the party didn't arrive until very, very late. They almost told us we had to leave because we had a big table for a lot of people. And finally, they arrived, and oh my goodness, the traffic and it took us so long to get here, and you know, don't do that. If that was the lesson that I learned from Mother's Day. Again, this must have been like 20, 25 years ago. Don't we never did that again or tried that again.
yeah. No, it's no. I'm not doing it. Burner lady, thank you for hitting super chat tonight. Most appreciated. And do you have Briller Jeopardy?
I think I may have Briller Jeopardy, and if you just give me just a few moments here, I will try to call it up. By the way, I came across. I was doing some searching on YouTube, not specifically for Jeopardy, but for something else, which you are aware of. But I did come across a couple of old Jeopardies with Art Fleming as the host, and I always remembered Art Fleming when he hosted Jeopardy. Thank you, Don Pardo. Thank you. Thank you. He would spend half the show thanking people for
Right. And
their
the old technology, it was a curtain that would open up.
the curtains that opened up,
Right.
and
And the
and then,
cardboard things that would go up and down.
right. And the other thing I forgot about was the fact that on the old Jeopardy, unlike today, where you have to wait until the host, no, when the question is being read, you have to wait until the question is read entirely before you can buzz in. But back in the day with Art
Oh
Fleming,
yeah. If he only had read it halfway, he'd stop.
right, bing, you'd hear the bell sound and you'd hear somebody ringing in to answer the question. They don't do that anymore. All
I
right, so
I had gone, by the way, just I had gone to see Jeopardy, the old Jeopardy, at the NBC studios as they used to tape it in New York City. I had gone a number of times to watch the show.
oh, that must have been a treat.
It was pretty cool.
And and it was on at 11:30 in the morning, and that's the one thing also that you don't get this now since it's on in the evening. But I mean, like Art Fleming come out, he says, I said, good morning, thank you, Don
Yes.
Pardo, thank you, friends, thank you,
And
you're too kind, thank you. Yeah.
in fact, you're every kind. Vincent Croce, yes, you are right. I meant to mention that. Everybody got to keep their money.
Right, but they didn't.
Not just the winner. Everybody got to keep. If they finished with positive money, everybody went home with cash.
But the thing is that you say, wow, in those days with Double Jeopardy, the top prize on the Double Jeopardy board was $100.
Right. It was 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. And
50, and
then
then they
double was 20, 40, 60, 80. Every once in a while, somebody would win the game, win the game with over $1,000. That was like
every
a
once in a
huge
great
deal.
while. Yeah,
Yeah. That
yeah.
was a huge deal.
Yep. All right. So on this Briller Jeopardy, we're doing annual precipitation by state. However, um, I'm just making sure that I didn't read this. This dates back to last Tuesday. No, I didn't. It shows you we didn't have a show on Thursday. That's what confuses me. And I had this
Right.
sent to me on Tuesday night, so this should have been Wednesday, and never mind. So annual precipitation by state, and we start with the Big Sky State, Montana.
Hmm. Oh, very tricky. Mountains, valleys, all the rest. I'll say 25.
Believe it or not, a little bit. Well, not a little bit. Actually, it's more than.
More than a little bit too low.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Um, Justin B says 34.
No, that's way, way up in the. Now, Maggie P, you're pretty close with 17.
Oh, so I was too high. I'm sorry. Maggie P is 17.
Right.
Norm Roberts at 22. David Carter at 19.
Now, 19.
Patrick Darcy at 16.
Well, Patrick Dorsey is in Snake Country with that 16.
All right. So Frank Scalera and Norm Roberts have 18. So is it Maggie P says 17, it's 16. So Chris Casale says 15.
Christopher Alley hit it right on the nose with 15. Tyler Fenga, which city? We're talking about states, Tyler, not cities. The entire state, which makes it all the more fun to try to guess, the value here. But it was
All the
15.
more challenging is the word.
Yes. So let's try Nebraska.
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 So Montana was 15, you said?
Yes.
Um, I would think Nebraska's probably higher. So I'll say 22.
Ooh, going a little bit higher, Joe. We've been ringing the bell right now.
Kenneth Rosenberg said 24.
And that is worth ringing the bell for. Dang! 24. 24 inches in the state of Nebraska. Now, here's a goodie, Joe. Nevada.
Oh my, that is hard. I gotta think it's a low number. So I'll say, I don't know, 12?
12 is a pretty low number, but not low enough.
Not low enough.
Christopedia was close with 11.
Jason Fox has 8, Patrick Darcy at 10.
Patrick
Maggie
Dorsey, 10. That's it.
Maggie P also at 10.
I
Wow.
remember
Yeah,
my
I knew
my
it wasn't a high number.
my grandparents, I think in the early 70s, 1971, maybe, I think it was, they went to Las Vegas. And the thing that impressed my grandmother was that everybody ran out of the casino. And she said, well, why is everybody? He said, oh, it's starting to rain. This was in July. I want to see, rarely does it ever rain during the summer months in Las Vegas, but everybody wanted to see it rain because that's how rarely they see precipitation, at least during the summertime, which is a good reason why Nevada as a whole 10 for the entire year. Now, how about the New Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
Yes, yes.
Northeast City, Northeast State, I'm sorry. Um, I'll say 42.
Ooh, Joe, you should have been with Patrick Darcy because he said 43, and that would have been right on the nose. So you came
It's
so close.
close.
Congratulations, Patrick Darcy. And our last one for the night is New Guernsey, Joe.
I'll say 45 for New Jersey.
How much? 35?
45.
35. Way.
40, no, no, 45.
Oh, 45. 45. That's
Yes.
that's much better, but no. But Dave Carter got it. Dave Carter with 47. Well, actually,
Wow.
all of you were dancing around the magic number. Tyler Fenga with 46, Maggie P 45, Jason Fox 45, 46 for Miss Ballerite. So yeah, so it's 47.
All right.
Or
All
as they
right.
say, or as they used to say in Linden, New Jersey, for WNJU, the Spanish station, Canal 47.
The Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast brought to you by Tempest by WeatherFlow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the description to this podcast. And if you decide to make a purchase of the weather station or anything else that they have there, because they got a lot of weather gadgets and gizmos and smart weather fashion, use the coupon code SPRING 2024. Because if you do, they will knock off.
10% off. And I'm laughing because on the chat board, Vincent Croce says Wrestling Channel, and
Yeah, I remember that.
you're absolutely right, Vincent Croce, because we all, as youngsters, uh, were wrestling fans at one time or another, and at one point in our lives, the only place you could watch wrestling was on WNJU Channel 47.
And you had
It
to
was,
have
and in fact,
a
it
U,
wasn't.
that
It was the
UHF
only
antenna that you had to attach to your TV set in order to
right
get it.
because that was Ucha UHF, and
Yeah.
it was the only Channel 47, of course, the Spanish channel. The only English speaking program on Channel 47 was pro wrestling, which was known as Lucha Libre.
Yes. Yes. All right, let's wrap it up, folks. Too
One of these
soon.
nights, one of these nights, we've got to get a way to get Dennis Cassia somehow to come online with us, Joe.
Well,
So he
get in touch with this booking agent, and we can figure something out.
because he at one time he was a teacher, a science teacher, and one time one of his students apparently was on the verge of not passing, and she during parents teachers night she said, "You're going to have a lot to explain to my father." And like he said, who's your father? He said Captain Lou Albano.
Oh,
And
how,
sure enough, on parent teachers night, imagine this. Here comes Lou Albano in
oh
the.
God, that's too funny.
All right.
Chuck Cardillo hits super chat late, but got better late than not at all. Thank you, Chuck, and he's going to send me pictures of the hail that he experienced. Uh, the baseball size hail, he said that he
Baseball
had the
size hail.
damages. Yeah. All right, very good. And we also had Birder Lady that hit the tip jar tonight. And who was the other one? There was one more. Paul Roman.
Paul Roman. Paul
Yes, Paul
Roman.
Roman hitting super chat. Okay.
And
Ever,
Berta Lady, you'll be happy to know, living up here in Putnam Valley for this is going to be our 22nd year, and I've learned over the years. Next weekend, Mother's Day weekend, I always wait until Mother's Day weekend to put out the hummingbird feeders. So they go out on Mother's Day weekend, and we bring them back in right after Labor Day weekend. So hummingbird season for the Rayos begins next week, the true sign of spring.
Okie doke. Everybody have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow night, which is going to be an interesting night with severe weather in the Plain States. So hopefully, this is one of those times where you want it to underperform. Okay, you really do want it to underperform.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
we'll see everybody tomorrow. Night night.
Nighty night.